Hello, I'm Pastor Eli, and this is everything you need to know about how to start or lead or serve in your nominating committee. The nominating committee is a very important function in the church. I will be speaking about nominating committees in the church setting from an Adventist perspective. Every church has a slightly different way of approaching their nominating committee. I will, of course, be taking a look at how we do nominating committees in the North American Division Seventh-day Adventist churches, specifically from my experience in the Rocky Mountain Conference, which is in the Mid-America Union. First off, the nominating committee is a yearly or bi-yearly session. That's to say every 2 years. Most churches will have a nominating committee held yearly or bi-yearly. And that means that the offices that people hold, whether that's deacon or elder or treasurer, is going to be held for however long that session is held between. This is where you select your church leaders and your officers, and it's for members only. People who are non-members cannot be selected during the nominating committee. People who are non-members cannot be part of the nominating committee. This is a members-only exclusive right of being a part of the church. So one of the privileges of being part of the Adventist church is that you get to form a part of the nominating committee as well as be selected by the nominating committee for any specific office. So your officers are going to be your head elder, other elders, your Sabbath school superintendent, which is the person that organized the Sabbath school, the person who is the deaconess or head deaconess and deacon. All of those people are selected by the nominating committee, and the nominating committee is appointed by the church. Most churches have their own special way of making sure that they select the nominating committee. Some of them collect names from the floor, where people will submit 5 names on a piece of paper, and then the people who have the most occurrences from everybody who's a member, those will form the nominating committee. It still needs to be approved by the local congregation after that. Other churches will vote on who can be. The church manual says that you cannot serve on the nominating committee 2 consecutive years. Yes, I did not misspeak. 2 consecutive years you cannot serve on the nominating committee. The language in the nominating committee section of the church manual allows for you to serve back to back if you are in a church that has a bi-yearly nominating committee sessions. So that's just an oversight in the church manual. It's technically allowed, but usually people are pretty good about being wise about that and saying, no, if you served last time, it's not good for you to serve again this time. Another thing that's very wise to do if you're a church, especially if you are a smaller church, try to avoid as much as possible having the nominating committee stacked with members who are all family related, especially if they are husband and wife. If you put a husband and wife and a son all together on the nominating committee, and there's only 5 people on that committee, those 3 people are going to have a majority most of the time, and that can be very unhealthy. So here are some instances that you need to know about when it comes to the matter of chairing. So if you are going to chair the nominating committee, here are some things that you need to be aware of. Number 1, you need to be able to set a time frame. You want to set the time frame and hold to it. If you're going to meet for an hour and 30 minutes, make sure that you're serious about that. Start on time and end on time. People will respect you for it. Organize the dates and the location. People often forget, where are we meeting? And you'll just pick any random location, and then that creates problems because maybe you decided you're just going to meet in the fellowship hall. But do you consider that maybe someone is coming in to do a cleaning? Do you know what times the janitor is coming in? Do you know if there's a ministry happening in that location? Be wise about the time and the date, as well as the location where you're going to be meeting. Make sure that it's a confidential place, or a place that you can maintain confidentiality. You need to know the members' eligibility. If you are the chairperson for the nominating committee, usually it's going to be the pastor, but in some rare instances, it can be the church elder. Please know who is eligible and who is not. A member who is in poor standing or not in good standing is any person who is actively participating in an open sin without any efforts to stop that sin and is unrepentant of that sin. Whether that's currently living in a homosexual relationship that is currently in the Seventh-day Adventist Church that's recognized as being not in good standing. I don't care how you feel about it. Those are the rules. If you want to take it up with your conference, please do so. I highly recommend it. I think it's worth talking about. If somebody is living in adultery, if somebody is actively stealing or has committed embezzlement, those are going to disqualify you from being in good standing. Something people don't like to talk about is that although you can be a member of the church and you don't have to tithe, you will not be in good standing. That means being eligible to lead the church if you are not actively participating in returning tithe or participating by giving tithe to the church and to the conference. I think this is a very common sense rule. You shouldn't be allowed to dictate the direction that the church is going if you yourself are not going to be financially invested in the church. Now, if you are not working and you are making $0 and 0 cents, then 10% of 0 is still 0. So this is a question I get asked surprisingly a lot. But yes, if you are not making any money, then you are still tithing. Your tithe is $0 and 0 cents. That is how math works. Okay, the other things that you need to keep in mind if you are the chairperson, in addition to knowing the members' eligibility, is you need to be able to provide a complete officer list and a delegate contact list. And that's to say, you need to be able to know how to get a hold of the people that you're about to nominate for nominating committee. Here's some more things you need to know. If you don't have these offhand, your church clerk will be the person who hands you these lists. You need a complete membership list of everybody who's a member, not just people who are eligible, because you, the chairperson, will know who's eligible, but your nominating committee will not be privy to that confidential information. They will have to speak to you privately if something comes of a nature where they have to know why someone's not eligible. But they are just given a complete membership list, and the chair gets to say that person is not going to be eligible for that specific position, and discourage people from trying to turn the nominating committee session into a time of gossiping about people. That's not the time. You want to have a report from last term's nominating committee, whether that was last year or 2 years ago or however long ago. The closest nominating committee report that you have, you need to have that on hand so that you can see who has been nominated before to serve as an elder or deacon, as well as who has not. You want to take a look at the complete church office roster. That's to say every single office that exists in your church. This is very, very important because people will get very, very upset that a specific ministry like the Flower for the Grieving ministry doesn't get filled this year because the nominating committee forgot about it, because honestly, most churches do. So please talk to your church clerk and make sure you have those things on hand. Let's talk about serving on the nominating committee. I've talked about the chairperson, and honestly, I think most of the people who are watching these videos are going to be people who are chairing the board, chairing the committee. But if you are watching this because your pastor reached out to you, or somebody passed this along to you, or I passed this along to you, here's what you need to know about serving. Serving is kind of like its own little special ministry. This is a rare opportunity that people often take for granted. It could be that just the pastor and the elder, in some churches I know this happens, where not Adventist churches, the pastor and the elder will just get together and say, this is who we're going to have lead, right? I get to choose. If I don't like that person, then I'm not working with that person. But in our church, in my churches, that's not how it works. The church congregation has the final say. The pastor and the chairperson doesn't get to vote unless it's to break a tie. Pardon me. But yeah, I don't have any say on who gets to lead my church. My church is led by the people and by the Holy Spirit, and how the Holy Spirit leads in those people's lives. So it's really important that you don't take serving on the nominating committee as a burden, but rather a privilege that if you don't want it, I guarantee you people who are more power hungry than you absolutely will. Let's talk about what serving looks like. Serving looks like being on time. Please be on time. Make your questions short and put your comments after your question. Nothing is more frustrating than hearing a brother or sister say something to the effect of, I have a question, and then they launch into this long story about something that they remember brother so-and-so doing, and then, okay, so what's the question? Are you asking if they're still eligible? Do you want me to guess the question? Please just let us know what the question is up front, and then give me the context afterward. Again, question first, and then the context. Question first, and then the context. If you have an idea, please say it. This is a safe place. It is confidential. If you have an idea that somebody should not be a church deaconess, and you are afraid that that person is going to find out, it is our responsibility that we keep that entirely within this conversation. You want to choose based on gifts and not on availability. This is a very, very important and often overlooked premise of the nominating committee. The nominating committee comes together not to see who is available, but to see who is a good fit for the ministries in your church. Oftentimes what ends up happening, I know because I've been in many nominating committees, is that we will sit through a nominating committee and try and think of, oh, well, that person doesn't ever come to church consistently. It doesn't matter. The Holy Spirit has a way of working on people. If you give responsibility to people, they can rise to the challenge, especially if they're connected to the Holy Spirit. You don't know why people are not coming to church on time. You don't know what people's disposition is or willingness is to take on a leadership role within the church unless you ask. We're going to talk about what asking looks like in a little bit, but please do not waste your time trying to think of, well, is that person available? If you are the chair, discourage that conversation. If you are serving on the committee, please avoid, abstain, don't bring it up. That's not what the conversation at nominating committee is about. You don't know how the Lord might change schedules for people. So choose based on the gifts that people have and their ability to serve in their talents and in their ability, like their actual service ability, and less on, oh, well, I don't think that person has enough time, or I think that person's too busy. Please don't do it. That's like my biggest pet peeve, and it always messes things up. Okay, let's take a look here at what it looks like when we go to call the nominating committee as a nominating committee. So if you're serving on the nominating committee, a good, responsible chairperson will delegate equally among the people serving on the committee the ability to call and the responsibility to call people that you have nominated during the committee. Once the committee has nominated people, they can select multiple people, a backup person if somebody doesn't accept. Go ahead and call. But here are some guidelines that I like to have for my nominating committees on what you should do when you call and what you should not do when you call. First of all, call during break hours and after work. Introduce yourself. So here in the United States, most jobs have hourly workers have a break at about 10 a.m. and then again at noon for lunch. Sometimes there's a break at 2, and of course most people get off work by about 5, barring those who are salaried or might be blue-collar workers who they work different hours. But try to be conscientious. Don't call somebody at 2 a.m. Or at 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. even. Make sure you're calling within good hours. Introduce yourself. Clearly state that you are with the nominating committee. Say, my name is Elizer, and I'm calling on behalf of the nominating committee at our church at Two Rivers Adventist Church, if you want. And say, you have been nominated for, I'm calling to inform you that you have been nominated for X, Y, or Z. Okay? And leave it at that. Leave a long pause if you need to. Make sure that they understand. Confirm with them that they heard you. Okay? And then what will happen most of the time is they will try to say no. If they say no, do not answer that. Say, we will not be accepting answers at this time. Please take time to pray about this. We're not going to accept same-day responses unless they say yes. Even for yes responses, I would recommend that the wise thing to do is to not take down that response as gospel. Give people a day to confirm and to think about this, to pray about this, and actually be led by the Holy Spirit. Is everybody going to take advantage of this opportunity and pray? Absolutely not. However, it is your responsibility to make that opportunity available to people. So, don't accept same-day answers. When you do follow-up, and there will be follow-up, expect that there's going to be a follow-up meeting. There's almost always people who just did not accept the nomination that they received. They're not interested, or they don't feel capable, or they don't feel that they have enough time. Whatever the case might be, there are going to be some gaps that you need to fill in. The chairperson needs to keep a running list of who said yes, who said no, and who has been asked. You want to prioritize these 3 positions above everything else. You must have an elder every year. You must have a treasurer every year. And you must have a clerk. You can go without a deacon. You can go without the flower girl. But you cannot go without an elder, without a treasurer, and without a clerk. You will get yourself in trouble. That's not just my opinion. That is the church manual. Okay? Don't force an office. If there is not enough buy-in from people, if you're not able to think of anybody who can fill that office, or if nobody's accepting that office, don't force the office. When you go to present the nominating committee report, present it with the gaps. In other words, be willing to present to the congregation, nobody stepped up for these positions. These positions are going to remain open. Okay, thank you so much for watching through to the end of this video. I know that I hit you very hard with some very rapid-fire points here on nominating committee. Nominating committee, for me, believe it or not, is one of my favorite times of the year. Not necessarily the calling people, but certainly getting together and thinking about people based on what their gifts and aptitudes are. I have a very special a very special soft spot in my heart for nominating committee, because it is how I was elected to be a participant in my church and eventually led me to be a pastor. Not to say that any of you are going to be led to be a pastor just because of nominating committee, but it's one of the things that set me on the track to ministry. So I have fond memories of nominating committees, and I have also been in very, very bad nominating committees. I've been in nominating committees that lasted 3 hours and got nowhere, and nominated 5 people. That's a true story. Some of you who know me know exactly who that's about. But yeah, don't be that guy. You want to enjoy your nominating committee. You want to make it enjoyable for others, or at the very least, make it as painless as possible. Again, to the chair people, please be prepared. Talk to your church clerk and know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, get on your knees and pray, friend. Get on your knees and pray. Okay, thank you and have a great day.